Thanks for tuning in, guys. You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Greg Driver. I'm joined by Rahul Jani and Leon Everett. Let's go! Everybody to Ace Comicals episode 100. That's right, there's 100 of these things now. Yay!
I mean, sort of 100. Let's stick with saying it's 100. It's not quite 100.
This is the official 100th episode.
Official 100.
That has, like, you know, all the different variant covers, one for each guest we've had, you know, that kind of stuff. And
is this the big event issue? Is someone going to die?
Yeah. By the end of this episode, someone will be dead.
Please let it be me.
Oh, right. So yeah, we've done 100 of these things now, and I'm quite proud of that, actually. We made it to 100. I mean, it's a bi-weekly podcast, and how many years have we been doing this now? Since 2016?
It's almost 4 years.
Yeah, almost 4 years.
On this run with this creative team. We started in, was it February 2017?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost 4 years. It will be 4 years next February, which is mad.
Mm.
And look how far we've come. We've been getting previews of stuff. We've been like getting to talk about the things that we love, the comics that we love. And I've gone like way deeper into comics fandom as a result of this. Like I started out like as a comics fan, but now I'm a comics fan. Like comics is life now, and I love it. I love that I get to spend so much time in pages of comics, and like that I have this deeper understanding of comics as an art form now as well, which is really cool. Like that's something that I've gotten out of this, is this like this deeper understanding of comics as an art form, and this understanding of history of comics and everything else. And it's just like, the more I do this, the more I appreciate comics, the more I love comics. And we were going to try and pick like a favorite episode each from this, or something that we've learned as well. But like, I'm just going to preface this by saying now. So the whole idea was that we were going to like pick one comic from the back catalogue of 100 episodes that is our favorite thing to have talked about, and the best thing that we talked about, or maybe one thing that we have learned or gained through doing 100 episodes of Ace Comicals. But like, for me, it was like so difficult to pick one favorite episode. Like, I really do love everything I choose to cover or talk about on this cast in its own way. Like, I actively do not talk about things I don't like. And my two co-hosts will attest to this, that outside the cast, I will bag on comics left, right, and centre, but I will never talk about them on this cast, because I feel like that's just like, there's no point in doing that. There's no point in being, in using the platform that we have negatively in that way, in my opinion.
And I think you're like speaking from a point of like, something that you absolutely hated, and not things that you're had pluses and minuses, or like you're a bit iffy on, but things that you absolutely detest.
Yeah, because I want this cast to be like I want this to be a positive thing and a positive force, you know, for people. So I'm not going to talk about something that I can't be positive about.
I quite admire that, because that's a very different philosophy on what I enjoy critiquing and the way that I do it. But like, I've always admired that about how you've always tried to find like the best in something in the comics that you review, and you, like you say, there's not a lot that you don't like, you choose not to talk about on the cast. Like you say that there's loads of comics you bag on, you know, behind closed doors, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you find value in a lot of different things, and that's pretty cool. Like, it shows not just like a positive outlook, which I admire in general, but like being able to find the best in something, especially when people have put their time and effort and, you know, creative talents into something. And that's, I don't know, I look up to that philosophy, and it's not one that I particularly share all the time, but it's one that I do sometimes strive more towards, because it's easy to be negative, but it's difficult to be positive and then speak on positivity. So A
Well,
good job on that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, because I always feel like I'm like, in real life, I feel like I'm like the eternal pessimist sometimes. Like I'm told many a time by many a people around me that I'm a glass half empty kind of guy.
Yeah, but then you're channeling it into the thing that you love, right? Like that was part of the reason we started this as well. And it's kind of nice to look back on it and see, you know, 100 or 200, 300 hours into this endeavor or whatever it is. Like you've achieved that goal in that sense. Like you found something to put that positivity into. And like before we get too far into it, the one thing I wanted to say up top about, you know, looking back on a century of episodes is it's really hard to do anything consistently and like maintain a certain standard and like find the energy for it as well. And like that is such an achievement to have, like, you're the keystone in this whole thing. You're the one who's been on every single recording. You're the one who's been on, I think, bar maybe one or two, unlike myself, who I've had to drop out of quite a few. You've been consistently there, putting your time and energy and enthusiasm into this. And like, even if it was bad, which is not, I think we do pretty decent work here. But even if it was bad, like, that would be an achievement unto itself. Like, just maintaining something for 3-4 years is wild. And like, I applaud all of us, but especially you for that.
And well, I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys, because I can't have conversations with myself. So
actually, on a few episodes, you have done so.
Yes, I have. Yes. Well, that's not me. That's the Loft Dweller. But yeah, he's someone else that I get out every Halloween and dust off. But yeah. So yeah, I'm glad to have made it to episode 100, and yeah, thank you for being there with me, guys, and doing this with me and being my awesome co-host, because like, without you guys, I think you guys have like pushed this as well as I do. So without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this, like, without having the push kind of thing and other people that I can shout at about comics and everything else. Like, I need you guys with me on this, like, kind of thing. So yeah,
because I think one of the things at the start why I wanted to commit to doing this was that I wanted to facilitate you to have this outlet, and even in a situation where like comics is a thing, as you said, like on the beginning episodes, that been a fan and read diligently most of my life, with some gaps here and there. But in terms of like analysis or reviewing or any type of like crit, it's just not my wheelhouse. Whereas something like film and TV, I'm way more comfortable dissecting those, because I've got all the language and just the experience to be able to confidently talk about those. And at the beginning, it was a thing where the sort of drive and push was definitely, oh, cool, I'm going to use this as an excuse to keep up with new comics, but also dive back into the past and sort of work that muscle. But it was also, I want to support like Greg's baby and keep this going. And I think one of the beneficial things there has been, because especially in like at the beginning, so a couple months in, which is the key point where a lot of things can just crumble because everyone's too busy, and then we're like, oh, we'll just leave it another week then, and then it just ends up where you keep delaying it, and then the thing ends. A lot of that, if it was just me doing a thing, it would have died, because I would have stopped it for a month or so, and it would have died. But like, having it be a thing where, I can't let down Greg, or I can't let down Rahul. It's been a thing where I think each of us have had that to a degree.
Yeah.
Where the show must go on. So we've sort of at times had to reshuffle things, bend over backwards, whatever, just so we could hit that episode. And it's not like it was a work thing, or it's a thing where the millions of listeners, we can't let them down. But it was like a commitment to be consistent with a thing. And yeah, it feels quite nice to be able to just look back and we've done like 100+ episodes, and they're all there. It didn't fade away. It didn't. It didn't like peter out, and then we all ended up doing our own thing. It's like, oh, remember when we were doing that podcast? And like it's an in joke just in life about dudes coming together to do podcasts, and it's like it's because people have so many opinions, but like it's what you do with those, and it feels quite nice that we've sort of built this thing together and kept it going and supported each other the whole time, and because of that, I think it's been nice to meet other people in the field, make friends with some creators, but also I've just been exposed to so much more like comics and graphic novels over these last couple of years than I would have done had we not been doing this. So that's been really nice as well.
Yeah, it's we've done this and we've kept it going ad free. We've kept it going like this is all like with like no outside support almost. It's just like we've kept it going ourselves, like pure DIY, which I love the most because it's that punk ethos thing that like is something that really appeals to me, as you guys probably know. But like the whole like the DIY thing and whatever, and it's like I guess in pre-podcast times it wouldn't have been let's start a podcast. It would have been like let's start a zine or let's start a band, wouldn't it? Like that's the band would have petered out because people would have stopped turning up to practices or whatever else. But yeah, it's that similar thing, and we've kept it going with that kind of like that DIY ad free, like, and I'm quite proud of that as well. That we've done this ourselves, like without outside support and whatever else. That we've just like worked on it, and we do all the editing ourselves. We do all the like everything ourselves, and it's really cool. And I'm really proud of that part of it, that we've come together to do that. And like the thing that I guess that I love the most about this is that I get to share my love of comics and joy of comics with everyone else. Like, so I get to share this with you guys. I get to share this with the listeners, and I get to recommend people things like, and people read these things I talk about and they enjoy them. They read the things we talk about and they enjoy them. And we have the power to put smiles on the faces of other people in that way. And like, we can hold this little lamp up in these pitch black times of 2020, like however dim that lamp may be and however small the number of people the light reaches it reaches someone. So yeah, it's all about that basically. Like, even if no one's listening, if one person's listening, the right people are listening, you know? So there we go.
Yeah,
episodes of Ace Comicals.
I mean, just to add one thing on top of that, because I think that's a really valid point. Like, if the light reaches someone, that's you know, that's the thing we were striving for. But also for me, on a very personal level, it felt sometimes it was a lot like, you know, what to what Leon was saying earlier, like we can't let Greg down, or we can't let, you know, our teammates down. It was also a thing of like, you know, when you agree to go to a party and then on the day you kind of don't want to do it, but you're like, I promised, you know, I said I would turn up, so I'm going to do it, and like squash down my my phobia of social situations or whatever. And then you do it, and then you find that once you're there, it's fine. Like, I got a lot of that from doing this podcast, because sometimes it felt like I had to put effort into reading a thing that I didn't have the energy for at the time. But once I started, I refound that love, and once I started talking to you guys, it became so easy. And like I had that feeling over and over and over again, and I've noticed over the last few years that feeling has diminished, and not just towards the comic, but towards the way I live my life in general. Like, not letting myself be burdened by the thing of, which looking back, possibly just laziness, like not wanting to commit energy to a thing. Like, I feel like that's affected how I work and how I put my effort into, you know, study and stuff like that. So I think in some ways I owe a lot to this for maybe just changing my outlook on how I live my life. And like, I owe that to you guys, and that's really cool.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to say thanks to you two anyway. for helping me keep this going and being my ever diligent co-hosts. So thank you.
Did you? I know you didn't. Rahul, did you have a favorite episode or favorite comics that you've read during this time?
I was thinking about this. I think my favorite episode is, so I've got a couple. So there's the obvious big ones, like where we got in. So Watchmen, the Watchmen TV series, that was a great episode. Into the Spider-Verse, where we were just gushing about how much we love Into the Spider-Verse, and Avengers Endgame, where we were just like gushing about these event movies. Those ones are standouts for me, but I feel like that's kind of obvious. But I was on reflection, and I was going through episode by episode, just seeing what we talked about. And I think actually my favorite one might be Spider-Man Reign, because I hated that comic, and I had so much fun, like finally having like an argumentative discussion with Greg. And like we don't do that often. Like we don't always see eye to eye, but we're never on complete polar opposite ends of a thing. And Spider-Man Reign was like, I couldn't find it in myself to agree with you, and I had to have the last word. And I went back and listened to it, and that was such a fun episode to record. I think that's mine. That's my pick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's anything for me. It's going to be like anything where I get to, like I couldn't pick a favorite episode, but I'm going to say the Ghostbusters comics I've covered have been my favorites because of how good they make me feel as a Ghostbusters fan, and this is the same with the TMNT comics as well. And getting to get super nerdy about it, because I know someone somewhere is listening and discovering this stuff because we turned them onto it. Like, and getting to get super nerdy about Ghostbusters and Turtles, like getting into that deep TMNT knowledge and getting to talk about it, because like if I talk about it anywhere else other than this podcast, people are going to roll their eyes. So it's nice to be able to get well into it like that. But yeah.
How about you, Leon? Did you have one?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, because you mentioned a couple of episodes, and a lot of those would be like among some of my favorites. And it is, I guess maybe those are cheating, because a lot of those are like adaptations of comic book stuff, and it is like my aforementioned like wheelhouse more.
Yeah,
I think one of my favorites, and possibly my favorite to record, was probably the episode we did, episode 48, the one that was about Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Yeah. I found that episode to be really fun to record, because it's an episode that sort of evolved as we were doing it. And we had Vicky Madden on, friend of the show, Horror Maestro.
Dr. Vicky Madden now.
Yes, yeah, put some respect on her name, definitely. And like, that was one of the earlier episodes, 2018, where like sometimes, especially early on, you can have your notes and stuff, and you've got a point that you want to like get across, or you want to like you're hoping the conversation gets to a point where you can bring on some stuff. And with that one, we had like notes and stuff, and we were going through it. But as we were going through, I felt like each of us were bringing up things which then evolved the point that the other person had, and it all felt really nice and organic. And I ended up digging into stuff that I'd only really half thought about or put in my notes, because either you guys said it or Vicky said something, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's a great. And like that was an episode where, and then we've been there again multiple times, but that was one that it felt almost like jazz. Like it felt very organic, and it was fun as well, because it wasn't a gush on the show, because we enjoyed the show, but we had like negatives to talk about, and it felt quite wholesome. And then another one that I've got fond memories of, because it's so early, is episode 2, where we spoke about the Ta-Nehisi Coates and Brian Stelfree's Black Panther comics of 2016, yeah. And that was fun because it was our second episode after we'd done the introductory episode, and we were like dissecting like 5 to 6 issues of this thing, and like one of the things that over the body of the show that people may have noticed is that I generally, even though I grew up and loved them, and we still read some of them now, normally the comics that I like to talk about aren't superhero comics, and not from some snobby thing. It's just current continuity stuff just does my head in so much that I only like condensed things now. I like it to have like a beginning, middle, and end, and not run for like 52 issues or something across 5 different comics. And because that was a start, and it was an author whose work I'd read before and quite loved, who was from outside comics. It was a great sort of jumping off point, because it was kind of the gateway drug to get me back into talking about like a Marvel comic. But also there was a lot of like literary things to consider, and it was the first proper of the current era of us really digging in and into the meat of a comic, and it was quite fun, and I think it set us down a good road for how we like speak about everything coming on afterwards. So I've got fond memories of that, and especially because of the timing as well. It's when I moved back to London, so everything felt sort of new and interesting, and the podcast was part of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, going back actually through the earlier episodes, I liked our first Freeform episode, number 3, which is like where Mikey was was it too lit for the real world or something like that we called it, where we got to talk about like we had a discussion at the end of the episode about what comic character we would invite into real life to party with us and things like that, which I thought was quite fun. I'm a fan of the freeform stuff. I like riffing, so I like to like talk freeform about things.
Yeah, and talking about like setting the template of the show, like that episode is pure the template of the show. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
we evolved that format, and that sort of became the week in, week out way that we proceed to talk about comics. I
also actually to kind of like round this up slightly, I want to thank all the guests that we've had on. I want to thank Anthony Askew, I want to thank B. Khan, I want to thank Marvin Lafayette, I want to thank Dr. Vicky Madden as well for guesting on the show, because like you guys made some awesome episodes with us. That interview with B. Khan was brilliant. I really enjoyed having Vicky on for the Junji Ito stuff. That was really cool. Always fun to have Askew on, and like his Watchmen episodes were great, and it's great to have Marv on when we had him on for the Christmas episodes and stuff. And we're going to be having Marv on quite soon for something we've got in the works, something that it occupies a special place in my heart, so it's something that I wanted to talk about on the cast, and we were talking about it a little bit just before the recording about what we're going to do, and Rahul looked at the size of the book that we want to cover and sort of winced a little bit.
I winced at the size of one of the many books that we have to read for that, but let's wait until we get there.
Yeah. But it's going to be a doozy, and if I get to do it the justice that I want to do it, which I hope I do because I love this story so much, then it will be a fantastic set of episodes. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for helping us make it to 100. Yeah, I need to thank Nigel and Tazzy as well for guesting with us, and for having me on their show. For me getting the chance to do a show with those guys, with the Mayamada guys, to be on the Mayamada podcast and to talk about stuff with them, because like getting to be on other podcasts, getting to guest on Story X Story and things like that, and like even when like pre doing this, when I've guested on other podcasts with people, when I've done things like Dynamite and the Brain and stuff, that's given me all the tools that I can bring back here to improve this. Like, I wouldn't be here doing this if I hadn't started guesting on Dynamite in the Brain and Secret of the Sailor Madness and things like that. Yes. Like, I wouldn't have the balls to stand up and do this. So
that's very, very true. My podcast experience before joining you on this adventure was guesting on those podcasts, and I remember one of my first podcasts on Dynamite in the Brain. I remember just being like nervous and considering, oh, should I have like a shot or something for like some Dutch courage or something, just so because I'm not a natural like social speaker. I'm not a gregarious person. But then like now, it's like I can just roll out of bed and be like, hey guys, how about that comic we just read? And like the way I conceive these things, the way I feel about speaking into a microphone is just so different, and it is interesting, like feeling and seeing that sort of progression, and it's nice to appreciate like where that started and where that came from.
Yeah, definitely. So we also have some comics to talk about today. We've got a few books to go through that some really interesting books actually to talk about today. I just wanted to like start up top with the fact that there was a comic convention this year. It was Thought Bubble 2020. It was a digital comic convention, and I did check some of it out, and I bought me a couple of things that I'll probably talk about on later casts. I pre-ordered Puno, which is like the next Peruvian cyberpunk comic by Gustavo Vargas. We've covered a fair bit of his stuff on here, and we've talked about a lot of his books. And this is the next one. This is volume 2 in his Peruvian cyberpunk series, Altiplano, and this is like part 2 of 3. So there's a Kickstarter for it actually, if you want to go and check and have a look. I think it's already funded, but if you want to just go and check it out and just get some hype for it, because I think it drops in February. Because I ordered it through his shop, from his virtual artist table on Thought Bubble, and then I got an email saying that it would be shipped when it's available in February. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I also bought a comic called Tale of the Goddess, which is by an artist, comic artist and writer, Jenny Muir. It's like an alien myth about a cat that becomes a goddess, and it's really super trippy and really cool, and it's got cats in it. So one day I'm going to get around to talking about that as well. I want to sit down with some more time with it first, because it's a really nice book. It's really nicely presented in A4 and stuff. Again, that was something I snagged through the Thought Bubble Digital Con. So I think some of it's still live, because I was having a quick look earlier. You can still the various halls I think are still up and live, and you can click on because these artists have like virtual tables. You can click on that, it takes you directly to their shops, their Etsy stores and things like that, where you can like order this like really awesome stuff that would have been things that would have like totally caught your eye had you actually been at Thought Bubble. And I think this virtual con thing's a great idea. I really loved it. Didn't get the chance to check out any of the panels, because they did do some video panels, but I didn't get the chance to check any of that out, which I'm quite sad about. But I'm sure they probably exist recorded somewhere on YouTube or something like that for you to go back through and peruse if you have a look. But yeah, so it's still there, so you should check that out. That's the Thought Bubble Virtual Con. If you just go to the Thought Bubble website, actually, thoughtbubblefestival.com, it's all there, and there's some really awesome stuff on there.
That's pretty cool. I like that they've been able to transition and be able to handle that. I know a lot of other events have had to do similar, and a lot just weren't able to at all. So it's nice that they can still create a place that will support creators and will give fans and enthusiasts a place to still interact with the people and all that stuff. So it's quite cool.
And I'm going to champion this sort of thing, because it's a really good way to support artists through these trying times, to have these like virtual cons setups where you can like go through the tables and things like that, but it's like in a virtual setting on a website where it kind of just has links to their shops, but it's kind of trying to replicate the feeling of you walking through the Comixology hall and looking left and right and seeing like all these different artists with all their awesome stuff just set up, like all their great artwork on huge banners behind them, smiling faces, like, excited fans, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's nice, and it's a great way to support these artists. So if you're thinking of buying any comics, maybe head on over there and see if there's anything you like, because there's some truly cool stuff there.
Yeah, just one thing to add on top of that is because in my professional space, I've been doing a few things like setting up online events, trying to emulate the kind of feeling you would have doing an event in the office, but obviously, doing over Zoom or whatever, and finding ways to replicate that space and replicate that same mood about, walking around and engaging with people directly is a really hard thing to do. And to hear that they've pulled it off successfully, or that, people are pleased with how that went, that's amazing to hear, because it's so much hard work. It's cool. I'm super impressed.
I feel like to replicate the office environment, one must first take off their Cheeto-smeared sweatpants.
Look, what happens outside of the camera stays outside of the camera. Right?
Shirt up top, sweatpants down bottom, wearing a shirt and tie for the bit that they can actually see, and then beneath the camera there's just like this sea of empty crisp packets, and that's how I imagine it, these people that have to work from home. I've not been working from home, but a lot of people have, so I don't have that luxury. So yeah, moving on to today's first comic. So this is a graphic novel that I chose to pick up through my interest in music, and this is my interest in music and comics again crossing over to produce something fucking wonderful. So this is a book called REDBONE, as in the band REDBONE. So the 70s Native American rock band. You will know them from the Guardians of the Galaxy song, Come and Get Your Love. That's them. And that's where you will have heard REDBONE before. I'm sure many of you have heard that song. So this is a book that was originally published by Stankis, Stankis Publishing, which is like a French company, and then IDW have picked it up and distributed it as well, and it's been translated into English as well. It was translated by Edward Galvin. It was written by Christian Stabler and Sonia Paoloni, and the art is by Thibault Balahi. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. There's probably going to be a lot of that. Lettered by Frank Cvetovic. Again, I am sorry if I have mispronounced your name. I've been trying to get better at names, but I can't promise that I'm ever going to be perfect. So this is a great kind of like historical music book, and it covers some really awesome stuff. So like it's the amazing story of the Native American rock band REDBONE, and more than that, it's also the story of the Native American civil rights movement. These young men, Pat and Lolly Vegas, the two kind of founding members of REDBONE, embracing their roots and standing up with other members of the band to embrace their roots and their heritage, and in doing so showing others the path and drawing attention to the struggles and gross injustices faced by the Native American peoples, or indigenous peoples anywhere really. This book begins in the present day and is framed through a family conversation in a restaurant between Pat Vegas and his daughter. It is narrated by Pat himself, and as the book continues, it's Pat recalling memories and stories from his career and descriptions of what it was like to be a Native American in the 60s and 70s in America, and to grow up in post-war America, I suppose, in ways as well. And it's also, there's a lot in there about the systematic ethnocide that was taking place, the continued eradication of the native way of life, like forced education and assimilation into Euro-American culture through Native American boarding schools, and the myriad horrific abuses that befell those who were sent to these institutions. And it is a fascinating story. It also covers like the formation of the American Indian Movement, or AIM, and the 1973 occupation of Wounded Knee, which was in protest against Oglala tribal chairman Richard Wilson's administration, as well as the way the federal government like consistently and persistently failed to honor its treaties with Native American nations. Like, this was a 71-day occupation and protest that became a siege, and it was covered. There was global coverage. There was an armed standoff. There was live shooting. People were killed. This was like the FBI and the National Guard just swarming this place, and there was like these Native American protesters in Wounded Knee, and like there was weapons fired, people were killed, and this is the site of the 1890 Wounded Knee massacre on the Lakota Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, which is like Wounded Knee Creek. So it will be 130 years this year, actually. On December 29th, it will be 130 years. So December 29th, 1890, was when the United States 7th Cavalry fired on men, women, and children, killing 300 Lakota tribespeople in total. So they marched them to this area, and then they tried to disarm them, and they were surrounded, and they basically fired down on them, and they had like kind of like they were just they were in this valley basically, and the American soldiers had them surrounded, and it's horrific when you read about it. Like, we learned about Wounded Knee at school because we covered the American West, and we covered our history teacher was actually pretty good with this. The way she taught us about the way that America was colonized and the horrific way that the Native American peoples were treated, in fact. And it's always been something that I've always thought about, and this book has kind of like helped me consolidate that knowledge and given me more of an insight into it through the eyes of Native American people, I guess, and it's just helped me to kind of try to understand that more, and it's given me a hopping on point to kind of learn more about this stuff as well, to learn more about the Native American civil rights movement and the way they're treated, and the fights that they still have to the battle that they still have to fight today in places like it's horrible, but you know what. And yeah, so this book has just been fantastic for that, for teaching me that, I guess. And it's a fantastic. I think it's a story that needs to be read and heard by many people, and I think as many people as possible need to pick this up and check this out because they need to know this story. Like, I mean, yes, REDBONE are a fantastic band and they make amazing music, but like all of the stuff that surrounds that and everything that they stood for, and the way that is explained in this book is just fascinating. And yeah, other than the writing being incredibly captivating and the story itself being so inspiring and captivating and, you know, so important, like with it being written from the point of view of Pat Vegas, and the art on the pages is absolutely breathtaking. It's free form with images kind of like snaking down the page. You've got splashes of paint and color, movement and scenery on a white background or vintage stock paper for things happening in Pat's past when he's like recalling memories. And it has this whole thing of being as if it is memories being recalled to the page and then them spilling out onto the page. Like, the whole thing is illustrated like a conversation, like memories coming to life. Like when people, like, it is what I would call descriptive art, or how that's the best way I can describe it, as descriptive art, because there's some parts where there's bits of scenes missing and there's other bits in great detail. So you imagine like how someone remembers something or how you remember something. You might remember the actions that somebody takes, but you might not necessarily remember facial features, but you'll remember the color of the coat that they're wearing when they're doing it. Yeah, and that's how it's drawn on the page, because it's coming out of this guy's head. And the way that is put together, and the way that is put together on the page, as if we are kind of like taking a swim through this dude's memories, is absolutely fantastic. I love it. Like things are in focus, or something like some things have greater focus and greater detail placed on them as if they are more important than other things in the image and things like that. And it's just great how that works. And there's no borders or clear panel divisions. There's just this wonderfully fluid memories laid out on the page. And I mean, I know that from a comic reader point of view, that sounds challenging, but actually it's really intuitive and it's very easy to follow. And it is like I am sat hearing someone tell the tale, like, and I am painting it with my mind. It's a fantastic book, and I fully recommend that you all check this out. So I'm going to end this by saying that obviously there are other books and resources that you can check out as well to learn more about the Native American civil rights movement, and you should definitely check out and get educated. You should check this all out and you should get educated. The fight's still happening today. This month, November 2020, is Native American Heritage Month. And the 14th of October just gone was Indigenous Peoples Day. And also we've got Thanksgiving coming up for our American listeners. And there's a number of Native American and Indigenous charities that I would urge you to donate to over Thanksgiving this year. And that's closing me out for everything that I had to say about Redbone. And this is why it's an important book and why people should read it.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. Like when you had it on the pull list last time I heard, it was definitely on my list, and I was hoping to read it for this episode with you, but I couldn't get around to it. But I'm definitely gonna check it out.
Yeah, similar. And like I've really been enjoying comic book like biographies or memoirs or just non-fiction in general. Like that's a thing that I didn't used to have. I always struggled to read biographies in text, and I find like in comic form, there's some really creative ways of getting you to like understand someone's situation, or express that same empathy. So I'm looking forward to checking this one out.
Yeah, so that is something I urge you all to read. And like I said, with Thanksgiving coming up, it would be a great time for our American listeners especially to donate to these Indigenous charities that they have, these Native American Indigenous charities. There's plenty of them out there. I will put some in the show notes that I feel would be good. But you should donate to, well, I would urge you to donate to these charities and give. So yeah, moving on from there. Next book that we're going to read that we're going to talk about is something a little lighter. This is a book called SCARENTHOOD. And was it all three of us, or was it just me and you, Ray?
No, I think we've all read it, right, Leon? Did you check this one out?
Yeah. So, to paraphrase the Ghostbusters, 3 on the book, ready to go, we be fast and they be slow. It's the bit where they catch the Scaleri brothers in the courtroom. And they're all like, 2 in the box, ready to go, we be fast and they be slow. Yeah,
you couldn't go 20 minutes without bringing up Ghostbusters, could you?
No, man, they're all back in the saddle, putting on the proton packs and in the courtroom, and oh my god, it's the Scaleri brothers, and all that happens, I gave them tried them for murder, gave them the chair. Yeah, so... Anyway, it's supernatural, spoopy people hunting spoopy ghosts. So yeah, this one was great fun, and like from the get-go, the cover has like that vibe, that retro Penguin Guide to Parenting vibe type thing, which I really love, with like the typeface and everything. And yeah, so I'm going to start with the blurb for this one, because I think you need the blurb. So, with their kids away on a field trip, a group of parents disturbs an ancient evil buried beneath the old church hall, unearthing a decades-old mystery about a missing child and inviting something hungry into their lives. Suddenly, their mornings go from playdates and peanut allergies to a battle for the souls of one broken family? And one child in particular? What scares you the most, fighting demons or letting your kids down? So, they're basically trying to juggle paranormal investigator and parenthood. Is the kind of the crux of this, really, and that's where the comedy lies. Therein in that point there, that crossroads. So I'll start with, actually, you know what, Ray? I'll let you tell me what you thought of it first, because I remember you saying, in fact, I quote pre-cast, Ray was like, "This was a weird book." Or something.
This was a weird book. Like to what you just said about the cover, I really love the cover of this book. Like 3 colors. It's just orange, yellow, black, and red. And the way you put it was like Ladybird guide to how to look after your kid, except there's like the bloody disembodied head of the Virgin Mary and like building blocks with the letters R.I.P. spelled out on the floor.
Yeah.
It's just really evocative.
Have you ever seen any of the Scarfolk stuff?
No. What does
Scarfolk? Scarfolk. It's like this. How do I describe it? Fake 70s propaganda. Scarfolk Council. So if you Google Scarfolk Council, you'll see all of it. But you should look up actually because it's really cool. But it's like kind of like subversive, like in the style of 1970s local council posters and infomercials and notices and pamphlets and things like that. But it's like really creepy and weird and like really difficult to understand and really twisted.
Like the kind of stuff you would see in a doctor's office in the 90s, but it wouldn't have moved since the 70s kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's kind of like but what they do with it is they twist it a little bit, and it has like this kind of like occult supernatural edge to it at times, and it also has this kind of like weird like the futility of bureaucracy thing going on, and it's great in that way. But you should check it out. It's
I'm already on it. I just googled one, and there's like a picture of a CCTV camera dressed up like Santa Claus, and it says "Big Father is watching you. He sees when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake." It's what baby Jesus wanted. This is fantastic. This is better than the comic.
Yeah, there's loads of that, but this is what the cover of this comic gives me Scarfolk vibes. So there we go.
That's a great touch point. But yeah, I think the comic nestled in, it doesn't quite deliver that. Like, it's got a very different vibe than the cover gives. I think there's a lot to unpack in this, because there's a few things. I had to read it a couple of times to fully follow what was happening. But essentially, I thought it was about a single father who was struggling to be a single father, like, you know, parenting by himself, because perhaps his wife had passed away suddenly, and he was, you know, struggling to deal with his kid and like picking her up from school and all of that. And then it turns out there's a little bit more happening at the edges that it's not revealing right off the bat. And there's stuff like there's a teacher figure who's like this fantastic, really inspirational sort of teacher who looks like she's really reveling and has all the energy to deal with these kids, but there's a little bit off about like her behavior towards like the bus driver character and stuff like that. And it was just, I felt like it was a little bit all over the place. Like there's a lot of characters going on and a lot of like different threads happening about like struggling to deal with being a single parent, but then also like mysterious disappearances happening in this town from, you know, decades ago, but then also some weird occult stuff happening behind the closed doors of this like locked off theater stage, which has statues of the Virgin Mary placed around it. And I feel like it's a very messy issue 1, and I still don't really understand what the intention of this comic is. Beyond what I get at the end is it's mixing the concepts of like struggling to be a parent, but also, like you said from the synopsis, what's scarier, monsters or letting down your kid? And I think it does a slightly poor job of expressing that in this first, 30 odd pages or whatever it is. But yeah, I don't know. That's where I'm at so far. How about you guys?
Yeah, so what I was getting from this is it because the art has this like real cartoon edge, right? And it really brings it all to life and gives it this Saturday morning cartoon feeling. And the Saturday morning cartoon generation, people like me who grew up on things like Batman TAS and whatever, are the grown-ups in this book. And the parents, and the book opens with the parents waiting for their children to finish nursery, and it's like a Saturday morning cartoon, but for 30-somethings with small children. In the way that it's set out, because it has like the kid gang thing going on. So Like, the parents are waiting for their kids to finish nursery, and they're posturing and acting like children, hanging out in a way, like with them telling tales and the vibe that they give off and the way they interact in these first few pages. It's like looking at like a gang of neighborhood kids.
Yeah, sorry, to butt back in, that's one of the things that I had noted down, but I didn't, like, because I waffled through that. I didn't hit on that point. But yeah, that's one thing I did like about this, is this point you just said about, like, the Saturday morning gang. And it's like how there are still cliques, even as an adult. Like, you feel like after you finish school and you move into the workplace, like, you sort of divorce yourself from these different cliques. But then even just by being involved in your children's school life, like, you still end up being formed into these same cliques and having the same preconceived notions about people. But like, you only get to see them part of your day, and you only understand through the lens of these kids. Yeah.
But further than that, they've taken the kid gang tropes of like the typical members of a kid gang, and then they've like aged them up. So you've even down to the neighborhood tough and the new kid dynamic that's going on in the first couple of pages. And for me, it's like this is the Goonies, but the Goonies are grown up responsible parents now. It's got like that thing going on where it's like the kids that are the neighborhood kid gang or whatever, like cycling about going, oh, that's old Mr. Sikowski's house and it's very haunted and we shouldn't go in there, But it's these adults in Ireland and they are the Sat AM gang kind of thing. They're like kids hanging out, which I really enjoyed. And that for me was like the point of interest, for it is like, oh, this is an interesting way of doing it, because it just shows that you never really truly change, do you? You never really grow up fully from being a kid, because you always retain like something of that, I guess. And I guess that's what it's bringing out in these guys. Like when they're meeting up again, is they've retained the kind of schoolyard hierarchy that they would have adhered to as younger children. And like, instead of the kids ending up in their own mischief and escapades, it's the kids. It's the parents. So the kids are at nursery, like their parents would be at work. They've kind of like flipped the formula, if you will. And then like the kids are almost the thing that's anchoring them and like regulating their what they can and can't do. Like instead of saying, oh, my mum won't let me go out on Fridays or whatever, they're saying, oh, I have to pick my kid up and take them swimming and things like that. And it just completely flips that formula where the thing that the barrier is the kid and not the parent, because it's the parent that's going on the little adventure kind of thing and getting into mischief and getting on escapades. And even like by the end of the book, they've even formed a gang. And they have the whole thing where they're like the gang thing with like everyone putting their hands in the middle and being like, Goonies never say die or something. And it's like, that was what I got from it. And that was what kept me going and that's why I feel it's so inspired, because it's doing something very different with established tropes and stuff like that in these types of stories. What about you, Leon?
Yeah, I feel like I land in between you guys, but probably like a few steps closer to you, Greg, because you nailed it when you said like it's the misfit kids come together as adults. It does give off those vibes, and what I like about the construction of it is, like, you don't often really get to see like sort of young parents getting into adventures, really, because normally it's people pre-kids getting into adventures, or it's like the kids have left and they get into adventures, or if you're lucky, it's an adventure family and the kids are like in their teens or something.
By the time you're a parent in these types of stories, you're practically dead. You just vanish. Like, you become a parent and then you just vanish, and then your kids making their own PB&J sandwiches or whatever.
Yeah, like kitchen. The dad in Stranger Things.
Yeah, like you become
like just a newspaper and a pair of trousers.
Yeah, you become a newspaper and a pair of trousers, or a post-it note on the fridge when they get back from school. In these types of stories usually, so it's nice to see that flipped.
Yeah, and it's really cool because especially how it was beginning, I was thinking, there was like seemed to be an antagonism between a few of the characters that I was like, oh, this is kind of annoying. Like, I don't really want this. It's like, it's just going to be some story about some sad loner dad or something. And what they do, like, I love when people come together on a thing, and I love a thing where there's a crazy supernatural type thing happening, and I hate when someone has seen something super wild and either doesn't say anything about it or no one believes them. And I like how it sort of begins that way, where the conspiracy theorist dad is all about that. But I like how that's just set aside, and it's like, I'm skeptical about what this could be. Is like the most pushback on that, but it's more a case of something spooky is happening. We can't explain it, but we're going to come together and sort it. And this is the end of the first issue, so I felt pretty good about that, because that could have stretched for like ages of them antagonizing each other, not believing him. But like, I like that construction, and I like the fact that they are like young parents, and they're kind of having to get to grips with like how to navigate that life, because this nursery runs from like 9 to 1. And on top of that, I do like that it's set in like Ireland, like County Cork. It's you'd always get this, and it'd be American. Like,
yeah,
always,
definitely,
always.
Like it'd be in some like little fictional town in America somewhere called something Falls, Pine Ridge Falls, or something like that.
Exactly.
You know, like.
And this one's in like County Cork, so it's super cool to have that.
Yeah.
Maybe even novel, just because you don't get it all the time. But it's I think that pulled me in a bit more, if I'm honest, at the start. And when we get that cool bear, I don't want to like get too deep into like actual specifics. But there's a bit where like there's someone experiences like a big amount of lost time. And the way that's conveyed is really good, especially with the wrinkle that we have with these characters' responsibilities. The way that is handled is like super cool, and it did have me more interested in this sort of beginning central mystery than I was expecting to be. And as you guys like were speaking about the you never leave school thing, and like wherever like groups of adults come together, that dynamic rears its ugly head, whether it be like work or like enthusiast groups or anything like that. Suddenly those groups start to form, and you get the popular person, the funny person, the controlling person, and blah blah blah. And it's like, I don't care for that. Like, I'm an adult now. But it's funny how you can never fully escape it, because it always starts to form where a bunch of adults get together. And I do like how that's explored here, where I think in the little amount of time that we do actually spend with all these people, I think they're efficient at giving us, for most of them, an idea of their personality and what they're doing when they're not on page. I'll say less so of Sinead, really, but I think with the other two characters and the lead, I do feel that we get a bit more from them, that in a small amount of time, that gives us an idea of the dynamic in their lives when they're at home with their kid or whatever. And I do like that. I thought that was like quite efficient. So like, I don't know, I'm interested to see what follows, because there's a nice mind-bending spooky edge with all of this.
Yeah. What you were saying, actually, Leon, I just want to build on what you were saying about it wrapping up nicely by the end of the first issue and not dragging things out. It kind of has that, because it adheres to that, in a way, to that Saturday morning cartoon formula, and this would be like the first episode that introduces each character, like, briefly, and gives you a flavour of what each character's about and who they are. And then by the end of it, you're at a kind of like a clear point wrapped up nicely. And it's not, it's done in that way where it's parcelled off in a friendly way. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I often have issues with first issues where I don't feel they tackle all the issues to get me to want to buy more issues. I feel this one did end in a way that it gave me enough to be like, okay, I'm in this world, and to pull me in and keep me going. And like, for someone like me who's quite averse to getting the equivalent of like cold opens at times, I feel like this did its job in the 25 to 30 pages it had. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with this comic, and I'm definitely going to check out issue 2.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I'm going to be on issue 2. Ray?
I hated that you put me first because I was the one who was most negative about it. Like, because hearing you guys be positive on it and say the things that you liked about it makes me want to reassess it. But like,
well, I had to do it that way round so that we could chuck buckets of water over the fire that you started. So
fair enough. I mean, I think the thing for me at the start is like to what Leon was saying about, is this going to be a comic about a sad dad loser kind of thing? Like, I don't really. This is a personal thing. I don't really like stories about neglectful dads. Like, not necessarily like awful dads, but he's neglectful. Like, his work comes before his daughter, and like he's struggling to make that balance. And I understand that that's a character and people are like that, and I just don't necessarily want to see it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just not interested in those kinds of stories. But I think the point where it does start getting me is there's a moment later in the book that Leon alluded to, that I thought the mystery of, like, the mysterious part of this story started hooking me more than the character stuff, because I don't particularly like any of the characters, and I think because of it, it's got this like Saturday morning school kid clique thing that you guys are talking about. I'm not really that taken with that, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I'm in it for the mystery. I think also, like, just the kids are weirdly off-putting. Like, in the artwork, I'm not a fan of like this pseudo chibi. Like, they've all got massive heads and like they talk weirdly, and I don't know. The kids themselves are sinister enough. I don't think I need the horror mystery aspect. Like, if it was just these kids running around, I think I'd be terrified to begin with. So I don't know. I don't think I'm in for number 2, but I'd be more than happy to hear what you guys think about it going forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be on with it, issue 2. So that is SCARENTHOOD, and if I just run down the credits for that, it is published by IDW Publishing, written by Nick Roche, writer and artist Nick Roche, actually. Colours by Chris O'Halloran, and lettering by Sean Lee. This one is one that was like very my wheelhouse, like incredibly my wheelhouse. So this is Sea of Sorrows. Now, this is historical horror, and this is the creative team responsible for Road of Bones. This is kind of like their follow-up for Road of Bones. This is like another exceptional historical horror comic that we covered previously. So we covered Road of Bones on a previous episode. You can go back and check that out. I talk about it a little. So yeah, like, I'll start because I actually reread all of Road of Bones coming up to this. Because I wanted to reread Road of Bones. This doesn't follow on from Road of Bones directly, by the way, or anything like that, but I wanted to reread Road of Bones because it's the same creative team. So Road of Bones was this like desolate Siberian tundra, and it's all hunger, madness, and Russian folklore, and it's like set towards the end of Stalin's reign in Soviet Russia. It's gripping, it's gritty, it's desolate, it's awesome. It's awesome reading for a dark winter night. Basically inspired by and set during the story of the R504 Kolyma Highway, which was carved from the tundra by Gulag labor camp prisoners who were buried where they fell beneath the road, hence the road's other name, the Road of Bones. So you should go read that book because it's great. But anyways, Sea of Sorrows. So this is the same creative team. So we are talking Rich Douek, Alex Cormack, and Justin Birch. So REDHAWK is writer, Alex Cormack is artist and colorist, and Justin Birch letters. We've got color assistance from Mark Mullaney as well, and this is also IDW Publishing. So this is the IDW sode. Anyway, so how many of us read Sea of Sorrows?
I did. I'm in the sea with you.
You're in the sea with me. Okay. So
I did not. I'm on the pier waving to you guys.
So yeah, the blurb for Sea of Sorrows to open. Deep sea adventure with horrific twist. From the creative team behind last year's hit horror series Road of Bones comes an all-new tale of bone-chilling terror. In the aftermath of the Great War, the North Atlantic is ripe for plunder by independent salvage crews. When a former naval officer hires the SS Vagabond, he leads the ship to a sunken U-boat and a fortune in gold. Tensions mount as the crew prepares to double-cross each other, but the utter darkness of the ocean floor holds deeper terrors than any of them have bargained for. Plunge headfirst into the icy waters of dread with another historic tale of terror from writer REDHAWK and artist Alex Cormack. So this is firmly in my wheelhouse. In fact, it's so far in my wheelhouse right now. So this begins on an expedition off the Canadian Atlantic coast near Newfoundland in 1926. We've got a sunken World War I U-boat sub, which is supposedly full of treasure, German gold, an American team of salvagers and rough sailors willing to go and get it. Just really cool. I love in this, actually, like from the get-go, I love how Alex Cormack plays with light and shadow. And we've got like these muted colours that almost give the book qualities of an old collection of photographs. Like they have this grimy quality, and the shadow is like stippled. It's like particles. It's almost like a black mold creeping over the sepia in places, and it just kind of like creeps up and hems in the image, especially in the bar scenes at the very beginning. It's just like you can imagine this dingy ass pub in the 1920s, and like how it must smell like stale beer and cigarette smoke and all of that, you know. Like how it must smell. But yeah, no, it's this grimy quality, and I love it. It's like in places as well, the picture's like, it's muted colours, but then it also takes on almost a sepia tone sometimes. For me, anyway, I don't know. But it feels like I am actually looking at old photographs brought to life. And like in the moment, it just like, yeah, in the moments below the water, like the whole page is this liquid inky darkness punctuated by white lantern light reflecting off bubbles and other surfaces. And it's like you can only see objects and items and people, living things, in the direction that the light is flowing. And we only get like certain edges of things, and we can only make out certain things. And that's how it must be if you're so far below water, when there's very little light penetrates that deep. And the only light you have is the light you bring with you. So I guess you can only see so far in front of you, and you're in this like inky black fog. And then all of a sudden you are confronted with like dimly lit surfaces of like craggy rocks below the surface, or a sea creature coming past your mask at close range or whatever. And then like you would get to what is like a sunken wreck, and you would be trying to make stuff out on this sunken wreck with, you know, and the light reflecting at different angles, maybe showing you different parts of the sign and getting an idea for how large this wreck is and whereabouts you are. And think, so good in the way that it communicates all of that. And like, yeah, the way the light reveals the invisible world below is just incredible. And the old school diving gear as well, which is like a thing I love. I love looking at old school diving gear.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I love those helmets. Like, they're just incredible, aren't they?
Well, they're kind of like, they're like the precursor to like astronaut outfits.
Yeah, it is. This is the thing that has always been a thing in my head as well. Like the kind of like the connection there and the duality of it. Like when you look at what an astronaut wears, and they're exploring the great unknown above, and then you look at these like sort of like early diving gear, and they were exploring the great unknown below, and it's the same thing. And they always say that the ocean has as many secrets as space. In fact, even more so. Like we know less about what's below the ocean than we do about what's above us, don't we?
I mean, they say. Within reason.
That's what they say, though, right? That's what they say. I'm right.
But that's within reason of what we understand about anything.
They being people of higher intellectual quality than me, but that's what they say. Right? So
but the thing is, like, they are very similar, and all like space stuff, whether in sci-fi, is always like it's just the same but in space. So, like, they use ships, people go out, they have to worry about oxygen. It's the great black, the great unknown. And with all that said, I'm more willing to get into a spaceship than I am to go deep sea under the water.
Well, the thing with the old school, like the copper, is it the copper hat something? I'm sure there's a term for it where like it's the big, bulky, heavy thing. Is part of the reason it was so heavy is not just a protection, but like to push you further down into the water to like fight against buoyancy, which you don't get to weigh you down, which you don't get in space. Like, that is ridiculously terrifying. Like, in order to fight against the thing that's pushing you down, you have to take away the thing that's giving you air. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't catch me in that.
It's a dangerous job, and someone used to do it. But yeah, no, I'm fascinated by old school diving gear. I just am. But yeah, it's a lot of this book actually is light and shadow. We've got a couple of pages where it's like red anger and monstrous violence of the Western Front illuminated by flare and explosion, and it has this similar vibe to what's going on under the water, except we're lit with the orange and red of anger and fire, and it just really does communicate the hell of fighting on the Western Front in World War One. Like, that's for me, that is a very good representation of what it must have been like. I mean, like, building off that as well, if you've been reading or following Lock and Key, the recent Lock and Key arc, Impale Battalions Go, that does a real good job of illustrating the Western Front as well in a different way. But like, this kind of like really does like what I know about World War One and what I know about the Western Front. This kind of like encapsulates that for me, which I really like. That's what I liked about Road of Bones as well. I liked the level of like care taken with the history involved in this, and the level of care to be authentic with things.
Yeah, well, at the same time with Road of Bones, it was mixing the very real and hard textured extreme weather, like extreme conditions world with the behind the veil supernatural.
Yeah.
And I think that both have that feel about, like, there's a worry if someone else isn't watching you when you're out there, because that's when the spooky stuff happens.
Yeah. And this book has like the unknown below, and I'm not going to give away the hook here, but the supernatural element is really great. You need to get on this for some deep horror. But like, I mean, Leon, we need more of your opinions on this, because you read this too, right?
So I enjoyed this as well. This is a very Greg book. Like, I was reading this thinking like, yeah, this is super Greg book. But like, I echo a lot of what you said, and I think that it does really like cool stuff in terms of, or in regards to the interiority of some of these characters, especially the ones that we either spend time with where they're alone, like the diver, or like the flashbacks that I won't give more information on. But the way that all comes together is so seamless, and there's just a great page earlier on that I don't even want to say what exactly happens, but it encapsulates the perverse nature of all of this, where there's a character who, in what we the reader would consider traditional danger of some sort, but there's a thrill in that actual danger, and that the danger or worry is immediately subsided because they've discovered something else. And I it's like almost wordless page, and it just captures all these emotions and thoughts and feelings so well, that I was able to sort of like feel it in the same way that I can feel the damp of like being out at sea, and I can like sort of smell that like sea smell, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And like I was saying earlier, I think texture is a key word. There's a lot of texture in this art, in the way the characters are rendered, but also in things like the night sky or the deep ocean,
and in the blown chunks floating on the surface of the
water. or to do with the like aberration you get with like flares in the air. Like there's and because there's so much use of like dark and shadow and like negative space in kind of it's very striking what's put over there. And like Red Bones, there's like a lot of good use of like red in its various permutations. And there's a very not tactile. There's like a very maybe sensual is the way, and not sensual as in sensual, but like sensory.
Yeah.
There's a very I mean there's kind of a sensual thing, but like
could you smell the vomit? Because I could.
I tried not to, but I could smell chlorine.
Yeah, I could see the vomit, and I could, I was like, ugh. Like, I felt that scene because I've been seasick myself, so I felt that scene. But
like what I like about it is I do, like with REDBONE, I do love that thing I was speaking about where it's hard scrabble life, trying to make your way, do it on this next scheme or to escape or whatever, and just seeing behind the curtain of reality in a way. But you're taking it in your stride because it's on to the next thing, and you're saying, was that real? I don't know. No one's going to believe this story, or maybe I'm just seeing things because I've been here too long. And I do love. I like that more than the more explicit things that we kind of see. I do like the in the shadows mystery and like people having to consider their actions in the past, and I love stuff where it's like, oh, I heard this sound when, like, I love tales of like, oh, this person used to work at this thing, and the hours of the midnight, in the middle of the night, they would hear what they thought was singing, or so. Like, I love that type of element where it's not tall tales, but it's us being on the edge of the natural next to the filter of the unnatural or the supernatural.
We're at the point where the membrane is really thin.
Yeah, and you're sometimes people are like half stepping through it and seeing what lies over there. And I like how it's not just whoa supernatural, but it's actually people having to consider their past and their wants and feelings now. And
it's a series of stressors and events that push you to the supernatural. Rather than you actually finding yourself immersed in it or being dropped in it, you are forced to it. You're forced to, first of all, forced to the edge of sanity, especially in the context of Road of Bones.
Yeah.
And then from the edge of sanity is where you find the supernatural, which is something that's always really fascinated me with these kinds of stories. The other really cool thing, comparing this to Road of Bones, actually, because you were talking about negative space, but Road of Bones uses negative space in a really interesting way, in a contrast to this, because Road of Bones uses a lot of white. It's like a completely different kind of negative space, because we're getting like these harsh Arctic, Siberian, cold landscapes, and like Road of Bones is mostly played out against the pristine white of the snowy landscape, whereas this is a lot of the deep sea black, and it's negative space, and we're still, but it's in a different way. Like we're, the bits that we're seeing in Road of Bones is the bits that the snow hasn't touched, the bits that aren't consumed.
Yeah, whereas this is where the light is too scared to go.
Exactly.
And it's that visibility of where, like, you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and you like see something out the corner of your eye and you're like, that was one of the cat. That was one of the cats, surely. Yeah. Like, I'm just tired.
Yeah.
But you can't quite make out. And if some ghoul wanted to be there, the ghoul could be there, and
totally. Could totally be there. Could totally be there right now behind you, listening to this.
In the next room.
Yeah. So that was Sea of Sorrows, and that wraps us up actually for today's comics.
I read the wrong book this week, because that book sounds amazing.
Read Road of Bones as well, Ray.
Okay, I'll get to it.
Yeah. So that has been Ace Comicals episode 100. So thank you for listening and helping us get to 100 episodes. Thank you for being a part of what we love and what we do. To everyone that's ever been involved in any way, be it being a guest on the show, be it being a listener, asking a question, whatever. Just thank you to all of you. So we move on to Le Pull List. So we start with the 25th of November, and nothing new here. Just a bunch of stuff that I just wanted to bring to your attention. So Department of Truth is now on its 3rd issue. Fantastic comic. Me and Leon discussed it a few episodes ago. Get on it. You've got The Plot number 7, great little horror title from Vault Comics. The Autumnal number 3, SCARENTHOOD number 2. So if you like what you heard when we were talking about SCARENTHOOD this time, pick up the first 2 issues next Wednesday. Forgetting that, most of Britain right now is in lockdown again, so we don't have shops, but you can pick these up digitally through various ways to pick them up digitally. Also, some stores are still operating like click and collects and things like that, so you can pick up your stuff safely, which is cool. And obviously, anywhere else in the world, if it's safe to do so, hit up your LCS to pick up these books. Obviously, if you're in a tight position like we are in the UK, if you're in a lockdown or if anything, then there are alternatives. Just look for that. But please check out your LCS before you hit Amazon. Like, especially in these times, like, check out what kind of services your LCS is offering, and where you can get stuff from if you want to order graphic novels and books before you hit Amazon. So we've also got I Walk with Monsters, which I didn't talk about it, the Vault Dweller did, but on our Halloween episode. So I previewed I Walk with Monsters, and issue 1 comes out this Wednesday, so check it out because it is great. And also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Best of Donatello, which follows on from The Best of Raphael, which is like a collection of really good Donatello bits. So if you want an introduction or hopping on point, check that out, if Donnie's your man. Ray, anything for next Wednesday?
No, you actually mentioned all the ones I was going to pick out. The main one going to be I Walk with Monsters. So, yes. Definitely check that out.
So, on the 2nd of December, which is the following one, so that's like 2 chocolates from your advent calendar, we've got Batman Catwoman number 1, which I am actually slightly excited about, because this is Tom King returning to the rocky romantic saga of Batman and Catwoman, with his Heroes in Crisis collaborator, superstar artist Clayman. And this is a DC Black Label title. So echoing plot points from King's epic Batman run, this is the sweeping tale is told across 3 timelines. The past, when the Bat and the Cat first fell in love. The present, where their union is threatened by one of Batman's lost loves. And the future, where the couple have a happy life and legacy, including their daughter Helena the Batwoman. And as the story begins, after a long marriage, Bruce Wayne passes away, which frees Selina Kyle to settle an old score. At every stage of their relationship, Bruce and Selina have an unwelcome chaperone, the Joker. Oh, and that lost love of Bruce's, it's Andrea Beaumont, aka Phantasm. Just thought you'd want to know. So yeah, I am down for that. Me being the absolute sucker for Batman books that I am. Lock and Key Impaled Battalions Go Part 3 drops on the 2nd of December. We also have Fantastic Four Road Trip #1. Now, the thing that kind of got me on this is it's got like this... I remember seeing this, like some press around this, some preview bits and whatever. Like, when it was announced, it's kind of like this kind of like cabin fever thing going on for it. So the Fantastic Four have earned some much needed time away from the job, and Reed has planned a fantastic old-fashioned family vacation to the Grand Canyon for some good rest, relaxation, and team bonding time. But Reed's manic mind can't quite disengage, and soon an obsessive side experiment he brought with him has all of them experiencing gruesome and terrifying side effects from his strange specimens. So everyone's bodies begin to horribly go awry on a cellular level, and it's a race to solve their lethal affliction, all while stuck in a remote Arizona cabin with no help for miles. So this is what got me about this, because it's like it's that cabin fever style horror, but with the Fantastic Four. And if you look at the cover as well, like the things that are going wrong with them, like the Thing is falling to pieces, like bits of rock are falling off him, and it's revealing the muscle and sinew underneath. And the Invisible Woman is going invisible in different stages. Like, you can see inside her brain and, like, to her organs and things like that. And she can't control, like, what parts of her are visible and what parts aren't.
This is some what-if body horror stuff.
Yeah, man, it's great. And, like, Reed Richards is melting. And like, Johnny is just, like, on fire, but it looks like it hurts. So,
oh, no. God.
He's like all blistered and stuff. It's great. Can't wait to read that.
This does look kind of cool.
Yeah. And then this other one that I looked at, which was Modoc in his own book. So we have Modoc Head Games #1. So from Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum, showrunners of the upcoming animated Marvel's Modoc show on Hulu, comes a journey into the mind of one of the biggest heads in the Marvel Universe, Modoc. He is literally, for anyone who's not familiar with Modoc, he's a head with arms and legs. He's like an evil Humpty Dumpty with psychic powers. Modoc is the ruthless and brilliant leader of the terrorist organization AIM, outsmarting heroes and outmaneuvering his cutthroat colleagues, gunning for his position. But when he begins to be haunted by memories of a family he never had, it leaves him unsure if he's losing his freakishly large mind, or if perhaps there's a lot more to his enormous mind, or if there is something more sinister behind those visions. So, yeah. Getting me some Modoc. I am up for reading that. And that is the end of the pull list. So that is Ace Comicals episode 100. You can catch us in all the usual places: Twitter, Facebook, www.acecomicals.com. Twitter's where we're most active. If you want to get involved in the conversation, at us, DM us. We're always open. If you like what we've been talking about today, if you read any of what we've been talking about today and you want to tell us that you enjoyed it, or you want to tell us that we were wrong and you didn't enjoy it, tell us. we want to talk about comics. It's what I want to do anyway. I want to talk about comics 24/7. So I'm always open for that kind of chat. You can also find me on Twitter under @Batto. That's BATTOU. Ray, where can we find you?
On Twitter @Monkeh. That's MOONKEH.
And Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter @Leon Everett. And it's the first time I've been on the cast since the election. Last time I was on, I asked people to vote. I begged you to, and you did. So thank you.
Yes. We did we? Oh, we did talk about that, didn't we? Yeah, because Orange was sus and Orange got ejected. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, we touched on it.
Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, thank you for joining us. That has been Ace Comicals over and out. Yeah, that's it. Ace Comicals over and out.